Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I am much better than last week.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Yeah, less drainage.
Back. Yeah. Much less, yes. That would not have sounded well last week.
That's fair. Thank you for making that call early.
Sparing everybody that noise.
Right?
Yeah.
How about 90 minutes of sniffling on the Today in Manufacturing podcast?
Or worse, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. Anna, still feeling well this week?
Doing fine, yeah. It's the first week of summer, and we get to sleep in a little bit in the morning, just like a little, but it is making a difference. And I feel like my kids are just setting me up for like, once they get used to it, they're going to go back to their school schedule. I don't know. Right now I'm getting like a half an hour extra in the morning, and it's amazing.
It's crazy how if you even go like 15 minutes past when you're normally supposed to get up, how you like are you still at that stage anyways, where you wake up with that panic, like I'm already behind?
I always wake up anyway. Yeah, I don't need, like, I will never need an alarm again, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it's still nice to be able to lay there for a second and just chill.
You either go one way or the other. Like one of our coworkers here, like he has been ruined forever for sleeping in. I fell back into it real fast.
You did?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. It's good to know that it comes back.
Because I would like it to come back. I really would.
Yeah.
No, it's the same. Starting summer, when you kind of just wake up and you're just like, oh no. It's we lost like 15 minutes. That means I'm 30 minutes late for work. That means he doesn't get to camp. What are we going to do?
I know. I have to like because the time is what you're used to. And then you're like, wait, what time? Wait, is this the time? Is it do it? Yeah.
Yeah. If the oatmeal's not in already, they're either getting burned or going hungry. One or the other.
I know.
All right. Well, but hey, let's relax.
No toast, only bread.
Oh, just eat the bread in the car.
Go-gurts are a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Go-gurt is the best.
I don't know. I feel like a go-gurt in a car just is a risky gamble. I don't know.
3 for 3 survived. So, you know.
I'll after this podcast, I'll walk you outside to look at Caden's chair, and you can determine whether or not that's a boy responsible for go-gurt in the car. I mean, the man just can't have goldfish in there. He like smashes them together, half digests them, and turns them into some sort of concrete paste. Daily.
That feels like a Manti thing.
Yeah, it's genetic. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite.
Thanks for joining us today as we discuss a very popular topic in the industrial sector and, well, pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. And that's how to improve and expand operations. I mean, this seems like a very familiar and obvious goal. But just like anything else, there's a right and a wrong way, or at least better ways of achieving these types of goals. Today, we're going to discuss 3 of the 7 recommended strategies. We'll finish up with the last 4 in part 2 of the series.
And we're back. Just a reminder, this week's episode is brought to you by Oracle NetSuite. Listen now to a new podcast, How to Improve and Expand Your Business Operations. In this episode, Jeff and I mix it up and talk about this very popular topic in the industrial sector. And, well, I mean, pretty much for anybody or any market where, companies want to keep the lights on and make money. Jeff, 2 important things.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many companies it just doesn't seem like that important to.
They learned the hard way.
Download it now. All right, our first story this week. Military-grade e-bike can go 80 miles per hour. Electric bike manufacturer High Power Cycles turned some heads last week. The company said it plans to pursue federal, state, and local government markets with its newly established defense division. Again, this is an electric bicycle maker. The announcement was paired with the rollout of the Revolution W, a military-grade e-bike that can reach up to 80 miles per hour. Made in the USA, the Revolution W is claimed to be the fastest factory e-bike ever made. High Power Cycles is pitching it as a quick and reliable mode of transportation for hostile environments and says it already has deals in place with government agencies. Anna, is this going backwards from a military technology standpoint? And is an 80 mile per hour e-bike, I get it, it's quick, but can that be reliable?
Or safe is my first thought. I don't know. I'm not sure about extreme and steep terrain really pairing well with 80 miles per hour. Sure. You can see the application for it. They talk about conflict areas, and I can see obviously there's a tremendous need in many applications for getting in and out quickly. Mm-hmm. But I think there are probably some risks that come along with this. There are plenty of tanks that can get close to this speed, even 60 mile an hour tanks. Jeeps can go even faster than this. So obviously the key advantage here is going to be the size, and probably the fact that you don't need to fuel it, right? You can just recharge it. But to me, the tight footprint benefits maybe need to be balanced with some more safety features. And if you consider that maybe conflict zones might encourage users to just completely floor it, and there's lots of hazards. I don't know. To me, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for the rider to wipe out, hit a rock, collide with something or someone at 80 miles per hour. That's not something you really walk away from. So I can see the appeal of the technology on the one hand, but the drawbacks to me seem immense as well. And I think we're kind of at the stage of the game where technology generally, especially defense tech, is really gearing towards making it safer for the user in a military application. And this seems to heavily prioritize function maybe over safety. So I'm not sure. It seems like it solves one problem, maybe creates another, but that's just my initial thought.
Jeff, you're going into battle. You have all your tools at the ready, and then you realize that your mode of transportation is a really fast e-bike, which let's note that to power that e-bike, you probably have a substantial battery on that thing, which maybe isn't the best in terms of getting hit with a projectile. How do you feel about that e-bike?
I'm pretty happy about anything that can go from zero to get me the hell out of here as fast as possible.
Okay.
So I'm not really worried about wiping out. I'm more worried about getting shot.
Getting out. Okay.
So I don't mean that in a condescending fashion, but when you're looking at the general dynamic of where this is going to be used, which is a lot of reconnaissance, a lot of communication, delivery type of dynamics, a lot of those factors are definitely secondary. Okay. It is get me there fast, get me out fast, get me there quietly, which is why this is great from a perspective of an e-bike to be able to not only have that type of speed, but that type of stealth. Mm-hmm. So I think this does check a ton of boxes, especially when you look back sort of the history of motorcycles with the military and what it's always been used for, going back to, World War I or in between World War I and World War II. A lot of things that were going on. The terrain was so terrible, especially if you look at World War I between the trenches, so to speak. So that's where it really came into being when you look at brands like Harley Davidson and Indian, especially with World War II. It allowed for a lot of, again, this one person, two person sort of teams communicating, gathering information and getting out of Dodge. So this seems like the next iteration of that. So I think it does check a lot of boxes. I think this could be a very exciting development. There's one bad part of this that could definitely be an issue. Okay. When you look at the most recent use of motorcycles in a conflict, which was in the desert, which again, tough terrain, tough environment, which is where I would have more concerns from a reliability perspective. If you're looking at using this environment where there's a lot of sand and a lot of heat, and you're looking at an electric motor that generates a ton of heat, that would be my bigger issue. But in that instance, they used the most popular brand of bike was a Kawasaki. It was the KLR 650, excuse me, KLR 650. That bike retails for about $8,200, okay, base model. When you look at these bikes, base model, you're looking over $10,000, okay, minimum. And then when you start looking at some of the other things that you're going to need to do to make it more durable and more useful for a military application, it's going to go up. So you could see potentially per unit this being a very, very expensive investment. And does that really, is it worth it, I guess you could say, in accordance with what we already have, with what we need to do? We're already doing a lot of surveillance and communication through drones and wireless networks. So what is the need? Does the need really justify the additional expense? And again, there are some safety concerns that are very, very relevant here.
Yeah.
So that would be, from an application perspective, where does it go from here? The one thing in its favor, again, though, a lot more of urban conflicts. We're looking at a lot of tighter spots now. It's not as much open battlefield anymore.
Yeah.
So again, the stealth and the fact that with an electric bike, you go from 0 to 60 or 0 to whatever much more quickly.
Yeah.
So there's some things to consider here, but the cost, I think, might be the biggest detriment.
Really? The cost? I mean, because you say 10 grand for a bike, and then you also say military. Like, I figure that they just maybe add a 0 for military applications, and even then it's still pretty cheap compared to other transportation methods.
Look at military spending, though, right now. It is being more heavily scrutinized than in the past. Now, granted, this is going to be something that's not going to just be issued to every infantry unit. It's going to be more of a special forces type application or utilization. So maybe not.
Yeah.
But again, when I look at the biggest things, again, when you got to be budgeting for bullets and uniforms and everything else, another extra $5 grand for this particular bike versus something that's worked in the past.
Yeah.
That can come into play.
I guess one of the biggest things for me were those projectiles and potentially hitting that battery and how much more protected that battery is going to have to be. Just so that way, I mean, there isn't like a thermal runway event on the battlefield. But you're right in terms of stealth and speed. If you've tried a new e-bike, I mean, you hit the trigger and you are gone.
Yeah.
Like, it's very quiet. That's actually been one of the biggest issues with e-bikes, is maybe even adding in a little bit of noise just to make you a little bit safer on the roads. I like how you talk about some of the old applications. Apparently, bicycles have been used on the battlefield for more than 120 years. I was just curious. So the first known use of the bicycle in combat happened back in 1895 in something called the Jameson Raid, in which cyclists were used to carry messages. Like you said, I mean, still to this day, they'd be used for communication and reconnaissance. So how fast, Anna, do you think the fastest e-bike has gone?
In any application?
In any application. Like, I mean, just because 80 miles per hour to me at first seemed ridiculous. But then I'm like, okay, if that seems ridiculous, that means someone must have done at least 3 or 4 times that on some sort of R&D scale.
Oh my God, how fast is it?
So the world record was achieved by this person named Max Biaggi in 2020. He was driving a Vauxhall Wattman, which was built by the Monaco-based Venturi Group. He went 228.05 miles per hour.
Oh, what?
Isn't it like a legit e-bike?
So that's the other thing here. It was like, yes, it is classified as an e-bike, but this thing looks more like a 2-wheeled pod than an e-bike. It kind of looks like you put 2 wheels on like a sidecar, and then they called it an e-bike. Because to me, like
there was a pedal functionality to it.
But to me, the essence of like it being a bike is that you're kind of exposed to the elements. So like putting yourself in this like aerodynamic pod, I'm just like, I don't know about that. I mean, you're going 230 miles per hour. So hey, get after it. But it just also made me think of how, like, if you've ever had an ATV going like 80 miles, 90 miles per hour, and just how vulnerable you feel on that thing when you're out. I couldn't imagine being on essentially like a juiced up BMX bike. Like,
No.
But I do want to try it. I do want to try this.
But I will do it.
Yeah. So the address here at the podcast studio is, we'll reach out. I'm sure they'll be open to it. Our next most popular story this week: 2-story home built in 8 hours. Last week, the Structural Building Components Association, 84 Lumber, and the National Framers Council held a demonstration at the Innovative Housing Showcase in Washington, D.C. The team wanted to demonstrate the, quote, future of home construction. So it built a 2-story, 2,400 square foot house in less than 8 hours. The project is designed to show how slight changes in the typical construction process can significantly impact construction cycle times, allowing limited job site labor to build more homes more efficiently. 84 Lumber is the largest private supplier of building materials and manufactured components in the U.S. The company's plants make components for single-family, multifamily, townhomes, and custom home builders. With new home design optimization techniques, a single 84 Lumber plant can produce about 4 to 5 houses daily. Ken Kucera, VP of 84 Lumber, says the 8-hour job isn't just some attention-grabbing gimmick. Sure, He hopes that showcasing modern manufacturing and installation methods makes installation much faster, improving housing options, and helping the builders' bottom line. The project hopes to raise awareness about innovative housing advancements that can boost the supply of homes, cut construction costs, improve energy efficiency and resilience, and make housing more affordable. Anna, how is this not an attention-grabbing gimmick? It is. Yeah. Just like at its core. Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, and that's okay.
A gimmick?
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be attention grabbing.
I mean, it's at a trade show. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a gimmick. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
or a proof of concept.
I don't think that slight changes to the process really tells the story of what this would entail. So to your point, gimmick maybe. I don't think it's realistic to say that this is how it would go for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting story because the topic is super compelling. It's full of promise, and yet these types of developments continue to proliferate, and yet really not gain traction like we are, I think, are hoping to see. The wording at the close of the article I thought was notable. It says the project hopes to raise awareness about innovative housing advancements that can boost the supply, blah, 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 cut costs, efficiency, resilience, making housing more affordable. It's just sort of unfortunate to me that we're still at this stage of raising awareness when it seems that this tech is ready to go. Therefore, I think the challenge must be the cost. And if you think about it, the construction industry would really have to completely upend their entire operating model in order to optimize this technology and this process. And you have to wonder if there may be very few existing firms out there who would want to bet it all on this at this time. Because for many, I think it means adding a factory along with the transportation element of moving finished walls, which is no small feat, especially when you consider the grab bag of like transport regulations around wide loads, the cost of that. So I don't think, again, slight changes is really... I mean, this is almost like you would have to have your prefab parts kind of exist within a hub and spoke network. This is like a full like distribution method of how you would do this. Because if it's not close enough to the end site, then you're not going to be able to do that cost effectively, which would mean lots of bricks and mortar would be required here. In other words, in order to build houses, construction firms would need to first build factories. And it's a bigger ask than just saying, adopt this new process. It's really easy. You know, it's a lot of upfront investment. And you can see some companies who are doing this on a smaller scale. But of course, it's a small percentage of traditional construction. And I think that like in order to change it on a larger scale, you're really, only pulling in maybe the biggest builders who have the most resources. Still, they have to be on board with a new model. It tells a lot that they dismantled the entire house and then shipped it in pieces to be built for real. Yeah. Like that, to me, that's like, okay, well, if it were easy to move a completed home and all the walls together, you would have done that. Like, this was not, the word gimmick is maybe harsh, but this was not a real project, right? It was a demonstration. And cool. It's a cool demonstration. I think modular home building is the way of the future. Putting up as much as you can in a factory and then building it on site is a great concept. But again, there are a lot of hard costs associated with that.
Well, and it's easy. I feel like sometimes proof of concept and gimmick could almost be interchangeable. You know, like this is a solid proof of concept. And I feel like we've seen a lot more innovation when it comes to home building, talking about 3D printing homes. And that I think is a little bit different because that you're bringing the entire process to the site, right? You're bringing essentially the machine that's going to pour the concrete layer by layer there. And then once the home is built, you're just moving it. I also like the idea of modular homes in terms of like, you almost have this kind of cookie cutter approach. It's much more efficient, hopefully more affordable, more scalable. But it's weird that in every other industry, we have seen like crazy advancements. And then when it comes to building homes, we're kind of still doing it the way they always have. Jeff, part of this that stands out to me is that, the idea that this could really help with the labor crisis, which is huge in construction. If anyone's tried to do any scale of home projects, hiring a contractor, you're aware of how limited they are in terms of resources. But they also mentioned that this is a type of technology that should help home affordability. Do you see this making homes cheaper because it's making it easier to make them? Or is that something that maybe as a result of adopting the technology, the builder kind of just keeps for himself?
Yeah, I guess I'm not as cynical about the technology or the process as you guys are, but I'm definitely not believing that this is going to translate to lower cost homes for the home buyer or owner.
Yeah.
I think when all the cost savings are assessed and realized, it's going to be by the builders.
Yeah.
They're going to be the ones, and they are taking more risk initially in trying to set up all this. You mentioned all the supply chain and logistics complications that would come from this type of approach. So, and at the end of the day, one of the things that is driving home costs up is they stopped making dirt a long time ago. We're running out of physical real estate to build homes upon. And that's a big part of the cost. The other thing is with this type of home, and you mentioned cookie cutters, that's not really on the top of everybody's list.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some that will definitely embrace the fact that this is where we're at financially, and this is the type of home we can afford, and this works for us. But there's a lot of folks who do not, especially when you're looking 2,400 square feet. I wouldn't call that a small home. I mean, that's a good sized house. That's a good sized structure. But when people are looking to go to the next level, they're even going larger than that. And then you get into greater costs. And a lot of these things that it's focused on here don't come into play as much. You know, when you're looking at that first time homeowner, that's where this could really potentially help in terms of passing along some of those cost savings. But if initially it's more expensive to do a modular house, there's just a lot of different elements that would need to come into play to make this really work and accomplish some of the goals that they're talking about here. Now, from a modular perspective, I found this really interesting as well, because one of the big things for existing homeowners that also drive up costs from a construction perspective that lead to the demand or the heightened demand being placed on a lot of the skills trades is remodeling. Now, if we ever got to a point, we're talking about a thing that could lead to the thing where they can do some pretty amazing renderings and prototyping of when we did our kitchen. We knew what it was going to look like, and what it ended up looking like was incredibly close to what they sketched out for us and showed us.
Yeah.
If you could ever go that far where you didn't have to totally reorganize your life around not having a kitchen for 3 months and do a modular approach to remodeling, like a kitchen, a bathroom, whatever the case is.
Or adding a room, adding a second level.
Yeah. To that type of point where you're all of a sudden this is being done in a matter of days as opposed to months, man, sign me up. I'm definitely in there. As far as the entire home, I think for all the reasons you guys have already mentioned, we're still a long ways away.
See, I was not, and sorry if I came off as pessimistic, because I think this is the future of stick building homes, just in terms of doing it smarter, doing it faster, doing it with less people. And, this was a 2,400 square foot home, but, following the event, 84 Lumber's crew disassembled the house and sent it to a job site in Virginia, where it's going to be rebuilt for the Habitat for Humanity. It's actually going to become 2 different homes for 2 different families. So I think when they think small home, they're thinking maybe half the size, or it being for a multi-home or multi-family home. And I do think, to your point, it would be great that, when we were looking at potentially moving to get a little bit more house or a little bit more space with a growing family, if something like this was more available, where it's just like, no, we're going to take the roof off, we're just going to do this, set it right on. And I mean, you talk about a matter of days, that could be a matter of hours. That could be like a half a day's job, just in terms of how modular it is,
depending on the application, I guess. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Talking about adding a bedroom for another child, imagine if you could just say I need a room. It needs to be this big and it's got to fit here. And they're like, yeah, we'll have it done in 3 hours.
And then you'd have to apply for 10,000 permits first.
I'm sure that with great technology, cities, villages, townships will advance and make the permitting process much more smooth.
I'm sure they will.
Because that's how bureaucracies work.
Absolutely. Just in terms of how quickly this technology is coming along, the same team tried a similar stunt last year, and it took them 12 hours. So just in 1 year's time, the design and manufacturing techniques that improved over the course of the year shaved 4 hours off the build time. So this stuff is getting smarter and faster, and I'm really excited in terms of where it's going. And I want to see which technology is going to win out, right? In your opinion, Anna, which one's more likely to win? A 3D printed house or this modular style home building?
I mean, the modular stuff is happening already. It just, it's not an 8-hour process. You know what I mean? Like how many hours are built into the transport time and the factory build time and stuff. Like there's a lot of human element going into that. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of costs. So it's cool that you get to see it on site, how they're doing that and stuff. But it's not just as easy as like 8 hours and it's done.
A little more
like,
behind the scenes.
A little more going on there.
You want to know, you want full by the numbers for this project.
I don't need to know it. I just...
Oh, I do now. I'm following up.
All right.
We're going to figure it out. We're getting to the bottom of this, Jeff. All right. Our next most popular story. John Deere reveals more job cuts, plans for Mexico plant. John Deere has had multiple workforce reduction announcements in 2024. So many that it's been kind of hard to keep up with all of them. The latest cuts are in Moline, Illinois, where the company is placing 120 employees in its seeding and cylinder operations on a, quote, indefinite layoff starting June 28th. According to Deere, each of its factories, quote, balances the size of its production workforce with the needs of the individual factory to optimize the workforce at each facility. Got that? But there might be more to it when it comes to Deere's strategic plan. In a statement, a Deere representative referred to as unrelated, the company also said last week that it will be shifting some production from its Dubuque Works facility in Iowa to a new facility in its building in Ramos, Mexico. Deere says that, quote, when the facility is operational in 2026, production of mid-frame skid steer loaders and compact track loaders will be relocated from Dubuque Works to Ramos. And while the Dubuque facility will continue to manufacture other loaders, backhoes, and dozers, the number of related layoffs at the plant, quote, depends on production levels. It depends on attrition and Deere's ability to reassign certain workers for other roles by 2026, meaning there's a big question mark hovering over the workforce in Dubuque. In an exclusive report, Deere told Anna the announcement at Dubuque Works reflects the company's, quote, commitment to evolving its business model, products, and processes to address rising manufacturing costs and improve operational efficiencies. The company has also announced 243 layoffs across plants in Ankeny, Urbandale, and Waterloo. So, Jeff, I'll start with you. Do all roads lead to Mexico for John Deere's manufacturing future?
Not all of them, but maybe more of them. You know, I think these stories are always hard for us because we have to balance the passion that we have for wanting manufacturing here in the U.S., especially, I mean, this is Illinois and Iowa we're talking about. This hits close to home. With the reality that with the way the economics and the dynamics are with Mexico being as close as it is, it's very tempting and very alluring. And there's a reality of U.S. manufacturers taking advantage of those benefits. So part of me says, you have to appreciate some of the transparency here. That's evident, even if John Deere doesn't want to acknowledge it. I guess some of those comments were very skating around the facts of the situation.
It was like weird transparency where it was like, these three things are true but unrelated.
Yeah. So I think we can read the writing on the wall, which again is sometimes difficult to do. What I don't like with all of this, more than obviously those jobs leaving, the one thing to remember, there are a total of 890, 120 are leaving. So there is still a healthy contingent in that Moline facility. Okay. They haven't lost everybody, but this is a bad time for John Deere. I mean, they have got a lot of stuff going on. First of all, they're wide open to scrutiny because if you look at since 2016, this is a company that has more than doubled in revenues. Okay. This is a $62 billion company. So when they start talking about cost cutting measures, that doesn't sit great.
Yeah.
Okay. We still have memories of that 2021 strike with Deere workers where they were finally compensated or where management kind of came to the table pretty quickly. And well, not actually real quickly, but they finally came to the table and made it right. I wonder if some of that is still resonating. You know, they're the UAW
still
effect.
Fallout from that. Yeah.
Those were UAW workers, or there's a UAW union there. So you have to wonder if some of that isn't also in their mindset. But to talk about moving jobs to Mexico or not acknowledging that you're moving jobs to Mexico in light of the fact that you got a pretty significant Right to Repair Act type of situation going on. You've also got a racial discrimination suit going on. Maybe you want to step out of the spotlight with some of these types of headlines for a little bit and focus on solving some of those issues and then acknowledge the fact that there are some of these realities, as unfortunate as they are, that are part of your business. So more than anything, I think it was just a real bad time to do this. Wrap up some of that other stuff first.
So John Deere, to your point, John Deere reported a profit of over $10 billion in fiscal year 2023, and its CEO, John May, received $26.7 million in total compensation. That's a hard look.
Yeah.
And, it reminds me how we've talked about John Deere quite a few times, just in terms of like how John Deere is also trying to evolve into this like tech company where it's, adding more tech onto its machines. So do you think there's a possibility that more of the equipment manufacturing goes to Mexico, but the sort of like tech hub remains in the U.S.?
I don't know. I don't know enough about sort of the production flow here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at, for lack of a better term, bolt-on type stuff, no, it's going to go where it needs to go to have the finished product put in place. What's going to continue to be a big part of John Deere, though, is service. I mean, their main market is here in the U.S., so it'll be interesting to see if there are greater investments made there on that end of things at some of these facilities to help service some of this equipment, especially as it has more automation and technology embedded in it.
Anna, as you were really close to this story and just did an incredible job kind of trimming through the weeds there to try and find out what was actually going on. What was your take on it? As you're kind of going through all of this, to you, did it seem pretty blatant that they were saying that, okay, a lot of these operations might be moving across the border?
Well, it was, as you said, there was a lot of weeds.
Very murky.
It was very confusing. I was actually stunned by how confusing it was to track all of the layoffs that Deere has undertaken in the year 2024. So before we ran this story, they'd already announced, in pieces, more than 600 layoffs across many different facilities. There were a ton of regional reports that were just news stations picking up on warn notices that had come out in their area. Mm-hmm. So the layoffs were being announced like regionally.
Very piecemeal.
Piecemeal. There wasn't it wasn't coming from Deere that like, hey, all told, we have, it's very hard to track. And in some cases, some layoffs were coming just weeks after a previous round of layoffs from that exact same plant had been announced. So I don't begrudge any company from acting upon a strategy that benefits their long-term viability, within reason, of course. But in this case, I think Deere made some mistakes, and maybe they were strategic in this because this felt so not straightforward and so opaque, and maybe that was by design, so they didn't get swept up in the headlines so much, that it was easier to kind of let these smaller stories get muffled out in the local media. So they weren't having to navigate what a big story this would be if they really said like, hey, look, we are eliminating these jobs, and just really like laundry listed this out. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't. Yeah. So, and now you have all these workers that I think are left having to navigate a workplace where every day they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And Deere, as you said, has admitted that attrition is part of its plan for lowering the headcount. But do you want to encourage people to quit or retire because they're in fear of their prospects? I mean, what a way to like lose control of something that you could better manage. I don't understand that. I think you're killing morale. Yeah. It's highly unlikely to benefit the company when you let that get out of your hands, in my opinion. Secondly, I think, the layoffs in dribs and drabs, they did a good job of keeping the scale of it out of the public eye. But I would be worried if I were Deere that at some point this doesn't get amalgamated and picked up by the mainstream news, because right now, the momentum of that could put them in sort of a Carrier, Indiana, in an election year type crosshairs, because the pressure, that the president could put on them, or, that could become a talking point on the campaign trail about Deere is this very American feeling company. It's like a heartland brand, Oh, yeah.
No, the logo is synonymous with like, Americana.
Exactly. And then also you have to add to that all the government contracts that they have. They sell construction equipment, they sell landscaping equipment, they have tons of like local and federal deals that with Carrier was enough to put them over to the edge to say like, look, we do enough government business that we understand that we need to maybe revisit this. Deere could find itself in that position very easily. And so, for them to like try to quietly do this. I guess I understand why. I don't think it's great for the workforce, but I think it would be even worse if, some big media site got their hands on this story and started really detail out like, hey, this is thousands of jobs so far this year. This is a plant that they're going to move all this production to in Mexico. And they're really leaving those workers with this question mark, as you said, of we don't know how many of you we're going to cut. We just don't.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's, you could definitely see this being picked up by any number of presidential candidates in this year's election cycle and be a real rallying cry until November. And talking about those employees, like notably, it was notably condemned by workers who have accused the company of acting on greed, quote, greed. And I mean, it's not that hard. We're talking about $10 billion profit in 2023, $26.8 million in compensation for the CEO. I mean, some of these are just like by the book talking points for UAW. To me, it just seemed like it's a hard time to be a John Deere employee. And honestly, based on what you're looking at, it might be time to start planning depending on your place of the company. I saw that some people had already announced that they're taking early retirement. I don't know. It's got to be hard to go to work and not know what's happening, when, where, why, how. It's just like that kind of confusion and fear when you bring that with you on an emotional level to the workplace, like just makes your day-to-day miserable.
And it spreads.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. Like the plague. One longtime John Deere worker at the Harvester Works plant told The Guardian, quote, "We get wind of more layoffs daily, it seems, and it's causing uncertainty all over. The only reason for Deere to do this is greed."
Ouch.
And I mean, I get this person wanted to remain anonymous because obviously they wanted to remain employed. But I don't know. It just, Jeff, we've kind of seen how this can spiral pretty quickly when it comes to employee morale.
Well, if it's not quelled, if it's not stopped, which we don't know how long this is going to go.
Yeah.
You would certainly hope it wouldn't go on much longer.
Yeah.
The one thing I think that Deere does have going for us from a political perspective is they haven't shut down a plant.
Yeah.
Okay. They haven't done anything like that. Also, don't underappreciate the brand equity of John Deere.
Oh yeah.
If a political candidate comes out bashing John Deere, you're also going to hurt part of your base.
Yeah.
Part of your base is going to get real upset about that too. And I
If
know
you're
that
trying
maybe
to save a John Deere
I'm
worker
telling
or
you,
a John Deere plant,
you don't understand the mindset. This would be like bashing your hometown baseball team. Okay?
But they're terrible. No, I'm just messing around. I mean, like real local hometown.
Well, if you're a Cubs fan, sure.
Fair and accurate.
Anyway, no, I think John Deere that could be a very polarizing move from a political perspective is all I'm saying, because if you are a user of John Deere, if you are a seller of John Deere, there's more people associated with that brand and extremely passionate about it than just those that work there. And I understand what you're saying in terms of the jobs, and I'm not disagreeing in terms of
sounds anti-jobs.
I am not anti-John Deere jobs, okay?
Yeah.
Well, all I'm saying is politically, I think they are a little bit more covered because of this, just how passionate people are about this brand. Also, they're about 3 times the size of Carrier. So they do have a little bit more punch behind them. And like I said, they haven't shut down a facility at this point.
So you're saying that like if a candidate came out and tried to position theirself as the John Deere American savior, that could flip on them pretty quickly.
I'm saying if you go about doing it in a way that you start bashing John Deere itself as an entity in any way, that could definitely turn against you.
Okay. Understood. All right. Our next most popular story this week. JCB begins work on $500 million factory in Texas. Last week, JCB, which makes construction, agricultural, and defense equipment, broke ground on a $500 million factory in San Antonio, Texas. The plant is reportedly the largest investment in the company's history. The 720,000 square foot factory will be the company's second largest plant and create some 1,500 new jobs over the next 5 years. JCB's biggest factory is the company's world headquarters that's located in England. This new plant is going to make load-all telescopic handlers as well as aerial access equipment. Production is scheduled to begin in 2026. JCB Chairman Anthony Bamford said the construction equipment market is the largest in the world. He hopes the new production will help grow JCB's market share, which has steadily improved over the last few years. The company's North American headquarters is a 500,000 square foot facility in Savannah, Georgia. That factory makes skid steers and compact track loaders. This Texas project should create more than $265 million in capital investment. Late last year, the Texas Enterprise Fund extended a $5.7 million grant to JCB, as well as a veteran-created job bonus of $42,000. And I understand that that's a bit of a gap between what was reported last year and reported this year. $265 million reported last year, $500 million reported last week. I guess let's hope for the Texas economy it's closer to that $500 million.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it was an interesting story to read. And obviously, like, I really hope that this project works out. It'd be great for San Antonio area. As you know, I am very pro jobs. So I've always been known as being very pro manufacturing jobs.
Yes.
So, but I did find it interesting that, as you said, back when this plant was announced in October, it was characterized as a $265 million plant. And now, just 6 months later, the number has quietly doubled. Why?
Yeah.
So many sources cited that $265 million number, including Governor Greg Abbott's website, which had a news release about it in October when it was unveiled. One report alluded to that figure and sourced a link to JCB's website that is now dead. Instead, JCB has an October announcement up there now regarding the factory that makes no mention of the investment cost. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe they suggested that was the figure and then switched gears and then removed all trace of it.
Well, so to that point a little bit, I have reached out to JCB. I never heard back from them or haven't heard back from them yet in terms of clarity. And we've run into this on stories previously where a local government really wants to run with a win, right? And so they run with it as it's currently being talked about, like back in October, which at the time was probably $265 million, X amount of jobs and this, and they kind of run with it then. And sometimes that's a little bit more premature.
We have no reason. I mean, we don't know that though.
No, but I'm just saying that has happened.
I just thought it was weird that the source link was an article that was no longer there on JCB's website. Anyway, I guess what I thought was also strange was that so the scope of the project does not appear to have changed from October to now. Like, it's still 720,000 square foot facility. It's still creating 1,500 jobs. So was JCB that far out on its cost estimates was my first thought. That seems like unbelievable when you're talking about like $250 million.
Inflation's been bananas this year.
It has. And we've seen projects go under before they even got off the ground for that very reason. Like the costs were spec'd out, and then over the course of 6 months a year, they double, triple, whatever. And then the company backs away from that plan. So I guess my thought here is I hope that they're not like a little bit out over their skis just at the outset here. If there are some, because there's some incentives in play, as you mentioned, like but it's like $5 million. Yeah, like $5 million from the state. I think the county was adding $11 million. That's still a lot of money out of pocket for JCB. So I'm really hoping that the costs are workable here and this actually works out because if it's truly like the costs have doubled from initial estimates, that could change an ROI pretty heftily. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, with that, what was it? The 42,000 veteran created job bonus. That's gonna.
There is that.
It's gonna be gangbusters for them. They're just gonna be like, did it get sent? Do we have it? We have it already.
It's in the account. Okay, good.
Already in the account. Jeff, if this does proceed, this is a real win for the local community and, maybe a sign of good things to come when it comes to U.S. construction.
I think so. I mean, JCB's expansion, you guys, I'm actually going to be very super positive on this one. So hopefully it doesn't throw off the whole vibe here.
No.
It might.
Hey,
it might.
Good vibes only.
Because JCB's expansion, like their methodology for expanding has always been to go into the markets where they're growing internationally. As you mentioned, it's a British company. Mm-hmm. So for them to invest again, they have a plant in Savannah. Now to invest here again in San Antonio shows that they have a lot of confidence in the U.S. market specifically. That's their approach. That's their strategy. So for them to be spending this much here, they may be seeing some things from U.S. construction side that they want to be involved with. The growth rate isn't gangbusters. It's 3 to 5% over the next decade or so is what's being projected. But again, for JCB to be investing like this, that may be a strong economic indicator there in that industry segment. The other thing that's interesting is, and I didn't know this, in looking at San Antonio, it's the second fastest growing city in the country.
Really?
Something like 130 people move to San Antonio every day. I did not know this.
Okay.
So with that being the case, they need some jobs. So this is a very positive development for San Antonio, especially for a company like this that, provided things go as they're projected to, would probably continue to expand and grow as well, even beyond maybe that 1,500 jobs. As far as the discrepancy, the money there, I wonder if there wasn't some confusion over the fact that, because even this story mentioned $265 million in capital investment. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what they were looking at and not looking at the whole expanse of the project and the cost when it comes to, we need power and water and stuff like that. So
maybe, but
I don't know. That is kind of strange. But again, staying positive, I think there's a ton of really good stuff that we can look at from this particular expansion.
Well, you have all those people coming to town, but they're all working remotely, probably multiple jobs at a time. So I'm sure they're fine.
That is growth. They're talking about San Antonio being over 4 million people by 2030.
Well, and one positive of, failing American infrastructure is that at some point we got to make a decision to rebuild it, right? It's got to be coming soon, right? So we're going to need all that equipment.
Well, that's why we had that huge, the Biden's Investment Act, right? Trillions of dollars.
That's right. I just looking at a little bit of history in the company, just because JCB is not, it's like I feel like it's a recognizable brand, but when you put it up against some of the others like Caterpillar or even John Deere, some of the other like huge brands in the space, like I think it gets a little bit muscled out or it's a little bit in the shadows.
America's sweetheart, John Deere. JCB sold their first machine in North America in 1964. That Savannah plant was their first U.S. manufacturing plant, and it was opened in 2001. Globally, JCB has 19,000 employees across 22 factories, including 11 in the UK, 7 in India, and others in Brazil and China. I also wanted to take a minute for a little special recognition here. Congratulations to the JCB monster truck Digatron, which finished second in the Monster Jam finals this year. Whoa, no way.
That's right. And also, it is an incredible truck and an incredible toy. We have multiple Digatrons in the house. So if you get a chance, check out Digatron. It's inspired by JCB's backhoe loader. Like I had mentioned, I reached out to the company for a little bit of clarity. Haven't heard back. But if you get to look into the history as to why JCB decided to get into the monster truck business, it's a fascinating story. Just in terms of it being like, family friendly brand, kind of get a little bit of an opportunity to not just show off branding associated with a Digatron truck, but also using their equipment to shape the tracks and stuff like that, the jumps and stuff. I found myself down a weird wormhole on forconstructionpros.com, just going like, they just figured it out. All right. So, with all the love there though, Digatron, I really should get a ride. Now, our most popular story this week. Toyota Subsidiary to close its largest U.S. plant and cut 1,300 jobs. Toyota subsidiary Hino Motors Manufacturing USA plans to shutter its largest auto parts plant in the U.S. The company said it had to make the move due to a difficult path to, quote, sustainable profitability. In 2006, Hino opened the facility to make truck frames and axles for Hino commercial vehicles as well as its Toyota parent. It is by far the U.S. division's largest operation, making up for about 70% of the workforce in the country. In a statement, the company says its board of directors elected to, quote, withdraw from the parts business at the suburban Memphis plant at the end of May. The facility, which has some 1,300 employees, is scheduled to shut down by the end of 2027. According to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Marion plants had an operating loss of $189 million in its most recent fiscal year. Company officials said, quote, recovering sustainable profitability at the site would be difficult. Now the company plans to, quote, redirect its focus toward the U.S. truck operations and that it would treat its Arkansas employees with, quote, consideration and sincerity. Hino also has a truck plant in West Virginia. Anna, looking at the statement from the city of Marion, is it possible for a reconciliation? Or is this just kind of a rare example of two parties separating without going scorched earth?
I don't know. I mean, I was surprised to read the statement, which, so for the audience, Marion city officials published a statement on social media that read in part, while this marks an end of an era, we remain immensely grateful for their positive impact on the community. Over the last 2 decades, the company, Hino, has played a vital role in our local economy, providing jobs, supporting local businesses, and contributing to Marion's overall growth and development.
Immensely grateful.
Immensely grateful, which doesn't sound at all like the ire you'd expect from a community of 14,000 people that's about to lose 1,300 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could think when I read it, and maybe this is just me getting roughed up by like being in this industry so long that like this is my perspective, but like, is this where we are now? Like, not only will we lure businesses in with millions of dollars and incentives and tear up roads and roll out the red carpet and, you know, take people's houses and tear them down. And, you know, sometimes we'll even negotiate with those companies when they hold us hostage over jobs and threaten to leave. And then if they do leave, we thank them profusely for their efforts. Like, I know it's not realistic for every business to last forever in every location, you know, but it just felt like, you know, we can't hold anybody's feet to the fire at all anymore. Like, I don't know.
What were they supposed to do? The place is losing $190 million a year.
Yeah. Can't they be like, hey, we're disappointed. This sucks. Like, you could say that.
What does that do?
Well, no, I mean, I understand, like, I just don't think it needed to be so glowing. Just like, but I get it. That's what I think. It's like, that's what I thought. It was more of an amicable separation.
They still have to protect these employees for 2.5 years.
That's what I thought. Like,
that's the only reason I think that they did that was probably because of the notice that's available. But I just like, I don't know. It just like, thanks for everything. Like, here's a big pat on the back as you walk out of town. I just, you know, like I do think, and I've said this in the past before, I do think that businesses have a responsibility to, when they come in and they lay down roots in a community, to do their best. And I know that they probably did their best here, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that Marion has to be like, cool, well, thank you so much. We're really excited to see you go. Like, I don't know.
Well, it just
was like sad to me to see that. Like, and I get it, Jeff. Like, what can they do, you know, with their words? I don't know. It just seemed like for these employees that are probably like beaten down by this experience, that like usually in this case, you got somebody step in and be like, you know what, this sucks. Here, we're gonna figure it out. Like, talking to the employees versus talking to the company. You know what I mean? It just felt weird to me.
Well, maybe when it comes to courting a potential, a new company to fill that void, maybe that's something that could be a stain to cities previously when they do go a little scorched earth and like other people look to come into town. They're just like, yeah, they're good at doing business up front, but like, you know, there's no love lost.
They were mean to Hino when they left.
No, I think that's a valid point. I was actually going to say the same thing. I think if you've got this huge piece of real estate that's going to be vacant in 3 years, you want to fill it and you want your people working there. What is the benefit of exerting any type of energy being negative about it? It's going to happen. Hey, thanks for helping us out. We appreciate while you were here. You operated at a loss for how long and employed all these people in the meantime. We're happy for it. Plus, look at all the things they're doing to transition these folks out in terms of health insurance, compensation, job training, all of those things. Plus, you've got 2.5 years notice before this actually happens. I don't think this could have gone better.
It's actually 3.5 years because it goes to the end of 27.
Okay. Yeah. My bad.
No, but I mean, it's a long time. To me, this reminded me of like when you're in a bad breakup, but you both own the house together, where you're just like, all right, it's not working out. We still got a lot of things to settle in the interim. Let's all be cool.
Okay, but like, 1,300 jobs. Okay.
I know that it's still bad, but like you still got to make it like those 1,300 jobs are still going to be there for 3.5 years.
Yeah, they could be gone tomorrow. We've seen plenty of instances when companies like this just pull the carpet out and leave.
I know.
So this could be a lot worse.
Of course it could be worse. And, maybe City of Marion took the high road and I wouldn't have. But I do think that I don't know. I just feel like communities have so much skin in the game. And then when companies just come in and they do whatever they want, I don't feel like we have to say thank you so much for the opportunity. Well, we will go file unemployment and try to feed our families while you walk out the door with our paychecks. I don't think that they have to do that at this point. It just seems like communities have rights too. These workers have rights. It's okay for them to feel like they got screwed here because this company came in and for 16 years or something like that, 18 years, operated, but I don't know.
18 years. But don't you think it's a little different because it isn't just like a warn notice in a 2-week window versus 3.5 year lead time?
Of course it is.
I
don't have to like the statement.
No, I understand.
David, you're not gonna reconcile this. We're just never.
We're
gonna
too
agree.
far apart.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Stop trying to be the middle child.
I'm not trying to. I'm not just being quiet and despondent. No. So my part of it was I agreed with Jeff in terms of they're still getting taken care of in terms of employees. They're getting that end of service bonus at the end of the 3.5 years. They're getting extended health care. They're getting outplacement services. Matthew, who's watching us live, it's great to hear from you, Matthew. He says maybe it's just an expression of the company having been decent and perhaps even have avoided that it happened sooner.
I mean, fair enough. I agree with, you all have a decent point. I know that, like I said, I don't expect that every business is going to last forever.
Yeah.
I just didn't love just feeling like they just got rolled over, man. It's just this little town. And they, this is they bet the farm on these companies because they don't have anything else. There's a 14,000 person town. When a plant like this shuts down, it is can be devastating to the town. This is probably their largest employer. So I don't know. I just feel like it's be frustrated that this happened. We don't have to be thank you, we'll figure it out.
I think to your point, one of the things that shocked me the most about the scenario, and I was trying to grab it, was the tone. It was just the tone of it, we're happy. It's all great. We're all friends. It was a surprising statement.
Yeah.
And here it is. Okay. Where they had, the City of Marion would like to express its deepest appreciation, like you said, to Hino Motors for their 20 years of service, providing jobs with a heavy heart. Did you have that one? With a heavy heart.
I didn't say it. No, heavy heart. No.
We also announced the closure. It's, it was a little over the top, but I understand
it's out of their hands, right? Yeah.
Well, just an interesting footnote here too, that maybe playing a small part in this narrative is 2003 and 2007. Toyota also flirted with the state of Arkansas to build billion-dollar manufacturing plants, only at the last minute to choose somebody else. Oh. So maybe they were a little conditioned to expect some of this from Toyota as well.
Okay.
But yeah.
They have Stockholm syndrome is what you're saying. And you're disagreeing with me. Okay.
This also made me think about outplacement services. I wanted to, because I was curious. We always hear about that. That's one of the things you always hear about when a company leaves town, right? They're going to get the bonus. They're going to get a little bit of healthcare extended, and they're getting outplacement services. So I was kind of curious, have outplacement services ever worked? Well, the short answer is yes, they have, but it seems like they typically work more when it's a face-to-face counseling and interaction. It's likely much more personal, and people seem to not care for these services as much when they're done, via a Zoom call. It's just a little bit more impersonal, hey, all right, your life is permanently changing. How can we work together on this? But, in terms of some of the stuff that really works, helping with job services or searches, resumes, cover letters, even helping build your LinkedIn profile. I was kind of surprised by that one, but definitely necessary. They help review job offers, compensation, and help negotiate your benefits. Those were some things that actually surprised me in terms of being put into play and working in reality and not just as part of a state, like the end of a statement, actually being put into practice. All right. Well, it was heated. It was a hot one.
It was weird that one was so heated, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, it was all right. It's great how we can all get collectively fired up, like starting with tone. But before we move into, in case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on the website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. We have another word from our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite.
Thanks for joining us today as we discuss a very popular topic in the industrial sector and, well, pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. And that's how to improve and expand operations. I mean, this seems like a very familiar and obvious goal, but just like anything else, there's a right and a wrong way, or at least better ways of achieving these types of goals. Today, we're going to discuss 3 of the 7 recommended strategies. We'll finish up with the last 4 in part 2 of the series.
This week's episode is brought to you by Oracle NetSuite. Listen now to a new podcast, How to Improve and Expand Your Business Operations. In this episode, Jeff and I discuss a very popular topic in the industrial sector in pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. So download it now. Learn about how to improve and expand your business operations. All right, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on the website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. I'll go first this week. What did I even pick? All right. I picked a story about Kikkoman starting work on a massive $800 million soy sauce empire expansion in Wisconsin. This one just came across the wire today, but I wanted to pick it out because I thought it was pretty incredible, and I had no idea the historical impact the state of Wisconsin had in soy sauce, in big soy. I'm just trying to use big X.
Big soy.
Yeah, like however many episodes I can in a row.
Attaboy.
So in 1973, Kikkoman turned a few Wisconsin farm fields into the highest producing soy sauce facility in the Western world. The top manufacturer of traditionally brewed soy sauce has been such an important part of the Wisconsin economy for more than 50 years that last year, the state even recognized Kikkoman Day to mark the golden anniversary of the company's plant in Walworth, Wisconsin. Well, yesterday, Kikkoman started a new chapter in its history at a groundbreaking ceremony for a major new production facility in Jefferson. It's a small community about 40 minutes east of Madison. Kikkoman will use some $560 million to build the new factory in Jefferson and add $250 million to expand its Walworth plant. Together, the projects are going to create about 83 new jobs over the next 12 years. The new factory will make soy sauce and related seasonings, including teriyaki sauce, and first shipments are scheduled for fall of 26. Now, I picked this story mostly for one person, for Dan, who I play old man cards with, because last time we played cards, he was just like, hey, when was the last time you heard a story about a new manufacturer or new manufacturing jobs in Wisconsin? And I couldn't come up with one off the top of my head. And he was just like, maybe that should be your next story, David. And so as soon as I saw this one, I'm like, I got it. And I'm going to send it right to Dan. Actually, I'm just going to send him this video clip, but it's for everyone else too.
Dan, are you there?
Yeah. Dan. He's retired too. What are you doing right now, Dan?
Does he know you call it old man cards?
He's going to now.
Okay.
No, yeah. That might have been too much. But so I picked this also because this comes after a nationwide search of some 64 Midwestern locations. They decided to come back to Wisconsin, and I thought it was pretty cool. They bought a 100-acre lot at the heart, that's going to be the heart of a 200-acre food and beverage innovation campus. The new 240,000 square foot Kikkoman Foods facility is going to be a state-of-the-art operation that is fully integrated and highly automated, which I just figured was pretty easily understood since, it's going to be such a huge investment, but only 83 jobs, very highly automated. But Wisconsin's governor, Tony Evers, confirmed a $15.5 million in tax credits that are performance-based, and those are coming from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And I also wanted to shed a little bit of light on this because they're good corporate citizens. Over the last 50 years in the state, Kikkoman has contributed more than $17 million to charitable causes in the local community. And I just wanted to pull this story in terms of being a good representation of like both business and government being able to work together to build and continue a relationship that works for both parties. And I think it should be a good example for kind of how things can and should be done going forward. Also, again, just shocked by the amount of soy sauce and teriyaki going through the Wisconsin supply chain. Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to check out the story, but what'd you think about the news out of Kikkoman?
First of all, I did not realize Kikkoman was made here in Wisconsin. I feel kind of bad about this.
No idea.
So I will know better next time I buy soy sauce and teriyaki because I do buy a fair amount of it.
Me too. I just use it, not sparingly.
Yeah. So no, cool. And also because I think it's interesting, it's a huge investment, but we're seeing a lot of these government incentives sort of come back down to earth a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it's not just here because it's Wisconsin and all the Foxconn stuff. It's because I think just overall, enough people have gotten burned. We've learned our lessons here, even here where it's a pretty safe bet, you would think.
Yeah.
With this company, it's been here 50 years and all that good stuff. Still being, $15 million. I don't think anybody's going to lose any sleep over that amount, giving it to a homegrown company like that.
And still performance-based.
Absolutely. So, no, it's always good to see that constant reinvestment in a homegrown company like that. And the fact that the state is kicking in and supporting it, all about it. And I think it also says a lot, if we can sort of be proud of the Badger State here a little bit, that it went up against some other folks in the Midwest and came out on top.
Yeah, it's just like, I understand where like you think that it's all kind of for show in terms of like, we saw some other sites and we decided to come back to Wisconsin when normally it's a handful, but it's like, whoa, you checked 64 others, huh? Really tried to go anywhere else. But I also wanted to give some props for the giant bottle of soy sauce or, the giant soy sauce representation at the groundbreaking. High marks for that. Really enjoyed. Yeah. Anna, one thing with these groundbreakings, like, do we really need to do the shovels in the dirt anymore? I mean, we're not even shoveling dirt anymore. Now we're crating in dirt that we will shovel ceremoniously and carefully pour back into the crate so that way it doesn't muss the carpet.
That's my favorite thing is like when they do it indoors. Mm-hmm. Like, what are we doing?
A good indoor groundbreaking.
What are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Like, do they even touch the shovels anymore? Yeah. Or just come for the photo and then you'll be out in 5?
Yeah, they should just like bring a laptop and like press on. That's really what.
Right. And we have paid the contractor.
Yes, all right. The transaction has proceeded. Yes, I agree. I did not know about the Kikkoman Empire in Wisconsin. So this is pretty cool. And Jefferson, I know because I kind of grew up in that area. Mm-hmm. And they have another big food plant there. And so I like this idea of this food and beverage innovation campus. Seeing some of these smaller towns, it's a very small town, kind of leverage what's working for it and try to expand upon that in a certain industry vertical is very cool. So I hope for some success here with maybe other companies coming on board and leveraging the resources. Obviously, you have a lot of utilities and roads and stuff that support these plants, and they have a head start there. So maybe more growth to come.
What's the other food manufacturer there?
I think it's a Purina plant. It's a food for animals. But food nonetheless. Food. It's all in the food umbrella. I'm going to look it up.
Very good. Well, Jeff, what's your, in case you missed it this week?
Nestle.
Nestle.
Purina Pet Care.
Oh, yeah. Still food?
Nailed it.
Counts.
Still food.
I picked an article talked about Mexico's drought is impacting chemical plants and manufacturing. So basically what we've got is a pretty severe drought going on in the Mexican state of, hopefully I got this right, Tamaulipas, that state. Basically it's the one right underneath the eastern part of Texas. Mm-hmm. So we were just talking about San Antonio. You go straight south of there. This is the Mexican state we're talking about. And this drought has been so bad that government is actually limiting water use for a lot of the companies in that area. Now, as you could probably guess, if it's south of Texas and right on the Gulf of Mexico side, we're talking about a lot of chemical companies. We're talking about a lot of refineries. So when we've got this going on in a very key part of the continent, it's going to affect a lot of other things. So some of these, especially the size and prominence of some of these companies and facilities, we're talking about a BASF plant, we're talking about SABEC, we're talking about Chemours was another one, and then Pemex, which is basically the state-owned oil refinery down there. Yeah. So some very prominent companies that are going to impact a lot of things here in manufacturing. When you look at what oil and chemicals, what they're going into or what they are needed to make, we're talking about medical equipment, we're talking about communications equipment, we're talking about oil and energy.
Yeah.
So it's going to have a very wide-ranging effect, and we're talking about rain.
Yeah.
We're talking about water. Yeah. So the far-reaching impacts of something this basic is still sort of crazy, how it can affect so many supply chains. And it's probably not going to have an effect in the next month, but it's going to definitely have an effect further down the line the longer that this drought lasts. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not here to talk about climate change and all that kind of stuff, but we talk about Mexico a lot in terms of manufacturers looking south of the border. And if they continue to look into areas that we know have struggled historically, potentially with climate change type issues like this, droughts, it's just interesting to see how all this is going to converge and potentially have an impact on things that we experience every day. This could impact oil prices. This could impact the availability of certain plastics. I know we don't like plastics, but we still use them a lot, especially in medical devices and things of that nature. So sort of how things in this very small Mexican state are going to have really a global impact is interesting. And you just wonder if that will at some point potentially creep into the mindset of folks who are looking at going to Mexico for manufacturing and nearshoring activities. So I thought it was interesting on a number of different levels, just because it's a global supply chain. When things like this happen in one area of the world, and granted, this one's much closer to home than others, but the far-reaching impacts are continuing to be felt.
Yeah. I'm going to go Tamaulipas.
I'm going to buy it.
But they said that, and one thing I would say to check out this article just because of the list. This is just the initial list. The list ends with there are likely, it's just a matter of time until additional industry impacts are going to be reported. And we're talking about 20 major things that are going to be hit by this. So I thought this was a great article to choose just because, in terms of impacting the industry going forward, this is impacting a significant part of it.
Definitely something to be aware of, just how it's going to potentially impact commodity pricing of so many different things in so many markets.
Mm-hmm. Anna, did you have a chance to check out this article about the Mexican drought?
Yeah, and I have been tracking it a little bit outside of this as well because of some of the scary headlines that you've seen about rationing and things that are, impending. And I think the scariest, hardest part about this is with climate change, it seems like it can be difficult to predict what you're going to get. Some places are getting a drought at the same time as other places are getting too much rain, and some places, some places it's too cold, and some places too hot, and that's all related. So it's how do you manage that? It's not just an issue of how do you cool a warming planet? There's all these other things that are happening too. So a lot to think about. And it kind of actually dovetails a little bit into In Case You Missed It, which is sort of a combination between, in some ways, your story and David's about rising coffee prices, which the headline was Rising Coffee Prices, a Rude Awakening for U.S. Consumers, which of course got my attention because
because you mess with our coffee.
I know. It's man, why?
We're coming for you.
Yeah. So according to this, U.S. consumers are paying more for coffee due to an array of production challenges in key coffee growing regions of the world amid surging global demand. So U.S. coffee importers have faced escalating costs, with imported coffee prices rising 65% since January of 2021. Those higher costs are now working their way to consumers, they say, who are shelling out 20% more for ground coffee than they were in April of last year. It's a pretty big jump, right?
Yeah.
So there were some reasons in the research briefing that I thought were interesting. I picked the story because I learned a few things. One, they said worldwide coffee consumption has climbed steadily in recent years, which was surprising to me.
Yeah.
Because I thought in the 1950s, everyone just drank coffee all day long, and then they switched to martinis at some point.
Yeah. I went from coffee to martini or coffee to wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more younger people drinking coffee.
Okay, but that's not true. I just learned that also because Gen Z apparently is drinking quite a bit less coffee. And I just read an article about this, how they're concerned about cafe culture and how that's going to change, and if people will continue to.
No one's going to go work on their manuscript at a Starbucks anymore?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
They'll have to work on it elsewhere. But they are drinking more like caffeinated beverages, but they're just different things. Like,
like those drinks with like the 6 times the amount of a cup of coffee in them?
Yeah, the like energy, that weird energy drinks and supplemented things. And what's that? Charged lemonade.
Oh, yeah. My goodness.
Okay, so
be careful out there.
So that was interesting, the coffee consumption, but it's obviously coming from somewhere, Jeff, right? And then also they said in the article that China has surpassed the U.S. as the world leader in branded coffee shops as a result of its consumption being up 15% in the last year.
Wow.
Why? Okay. And then it also added that Vietnam, which is the 3rd leading coffee supplier to the U.S. Did anyone know that? Vietnam?
I'm learning all kinds of things today.
I know. Continues to suffer from COVID-related disruptions. And they said stringent travel restrictions in the country led to a notable workforce decline. So I wonder if people have they went on for so long that they're just not back in the workforce. But anyway, all of these interesting variables existing on top of the climate challenges. So droughts, frost, fires, a lot of this taking place in Brazil, where as much as a 1/5 of their Arabica coffee growing areas have been damaged. And below average rainfall continues to hamper production. So we talked about this last week with oranges, right? Mm-hmm. In many cases, these variables may not improve. And so we have to anticipate either more scarcity, higher prices, food companies and consumers having to make some changes, probably all of those things. And so I think like if you're in the food industry, you have to consider what's happening here and take it seriously, because there are going to be a lot of changes that we're going to see take place with some of these, one bad growing season, like we talked about with the orange juice. Yeah. And people are putting tangerines in there. So is
this what's going to happen? Are we going to get like a tangerine hybrid coffee? Because it's going to have to be supplemented?
I don't know. Or people really get like grossed out by lab grown everything, but that's going to happen. Right. And probably it's going to become more a premium product. So people who are, who can't pay the premium are going to get worse coffee, and it's just the way things will go, probably.
Well, luckily in my home, we embrace the worst coffee
You
possible.
Already get it at home.
It is the worst. But we'll need to start hoarding. I'll have to reach out to Shop Floor Coffee again and just be like, we're going to need all the samples. Yeah, all of them. We'll just freeze them.
Why do you have the worst coffee?
Oh, because we're a home that doesn't believe in paying a premium for coffee. And so we're just like that $12.99 canister, like that you
got
can.
some Sanka?
Yeah.
He says we, but your tone, I don't know. I just feel like.
It's it's a choice that one of us makes for both of us. And like every once in a while I can sneak a canister of like chock full of nuts or something in there and just be like, oh, it's on sale.
Oh, it fell in there.
Yeah, can you believe that these little pouches of Seattle's Best were like on super sale? But no, it's a choice that we make together.
It's good, David.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Jeff, what are your thoughts on what's going on with the coffee market?
Where do you think this is going to hit the most? Is this going to hit like grocery stores, or is this going to hit more like the cafes? I mean, there's just a ton of these places around here now that people have become conditioned to paying $8 for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, where are you going to see this the most, I guess?
So that was covered in the article as well. They mentioned how during the pandemic, people became more adept at making their fancy coffee drinks at home. Okay. And that had a real market impact. So they're like, now you're going to see more people buying like their flavorings at the store and their fancy creamers and things, and trying to, and maybe just like their pour over equipment and espresso machines and stuff, trying to do it at home versus going to the cafe. Cause I know the cafe prices are crazy. And not everybody's going to do that forever. So
no, that was one of the first things that children priced me out of, was the expensive cup of coffee. Where you're just like, okay, I can justify a lot of things, but this one's going to be hard. Producer Alex says that nobody drinks coffee for the taste. If you like the taste, it's not coffee.
What?
I think that he's not. I think he's drinking the same coffee I am.
I'm going to disagree with that one. And I'm not a big coffee guy, but I can definitely want it to taste good.
Yeah, I drink black coffee, and I'll never stop. So,
well, we all have different opinions, and they're all embraced and appreciated, and that is the strength of the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Alex, what did you think of the letter from Marion?
He says it was great.
He did not say that.
Well,
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
You're good, Alex. I got you.
Let's move on to our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
So I just wanted to say that, like, last week, a friend called me on my birthday, and it was one of my good friends from high school, and we were talking about, like, we should all get together and see each other. There's like 5 of us, and so I just sent an email out. I was like, hey, let's all take a long weekend and go somewhere, and like everyone was like, yes. And so within like the course of a couple days, we had everything figured out. And I was just like, man, we're always like, we're too busy. It's too hard. It's too hard to figure this stuff out. But it wasn't that hard to figure out. And I was really glad that we did that. And I sent that email. So that's just my my thought for today as we close is, man, just send out that email and see what happens. Cause like, it was really like, felt great to kind of reconnect with that crew we all live in different cities now, to be able to like plan to reconnect, and we're all going to do it. It's important to everyone. So, but it always takes that person to just, and it's like a 2-sentence email. I know. Just because you're right. Like, it's so easy to just be like, we're too busy. We're too busy. I know. And like, but like everybody was like immediately like, yes, let's do this. I don't know. It's nice. And everybody wants to get together though, so it is definitely worth the extra effort. I completely agree with you. Yeah. I'm motivated to ask my friend that would typically do that to do that for us. Do it. Yeah. So my final thought this week was, my final thought last week, I called out an old friend in terms of the book recommendation that he gave me. And when I posted the clip, he just said, wow, your response to this book is just incredibly on brand. And I was like, the David brand. Mm-hmm.
How high did your voice go up?
It was high. But so it was just like, apologies for my brand. He's like, no, it's great. It's just really you. And I'm like, whoa, he's swinging. But so I just, embrace the brand and apologize to those who maybe victimize us. But beyond being on brand, two of my favorite things are gin and sarcasm. And so when I saw that they made a Deadpool aviation gin crossover because of the Ryan Reynolds connection there, they just had me. Like, I bought the case. And sometimes when something is so perfect in terms of, so I highly encourage you.
So you spend $200 for a bottle of gin, but you won't spend $15 on decent coffee?
This is different. It's different.
Okay.
And no, it was like, okay.
That's your brand. I forgot.
Times 12.
You're on brand.
Sanka is on brand for David.
It was like 3. But I got a case. And I'm going to enjoy it so much more because it has a red and black label. Rather than
100%.
Yeah,
I get it.
It's beautiful. It's so well done. It's so perfectly on brand. The other thing is that I'm out next week. I'm going to take a little bit of recreation. And I think producer Alex said nobody likes the taste of gin. If you do, it's not gin. Oh, I got it. He's doing it. He's working an angle.
He's got a bit.
He's got a bit. So I'll be out next week. But look forward to catching up after getting recharged a little bit.
Awesome.
Or maybe I'm just going to, a week alone in the woods with the family. Maybe I'm just dragging myself back in. Please save me. I can't wait to get back to my desk. But yeah, so sorry to miss you guys next week. Jeff, what is your final thought this week?
So I was sick last week. Obviously, I was out. Andy did a great job filling in. But 2 weeks ago, we had the story on the Reese's, right? The lawsuit.
The carvings?
Because the carvings were not accurate.
Yeah.
My wife was listening to the podcast, and she said she was belly laughing listening to that story, partially because of the ridiculousness of the lawsuit, but also because of the way I kind of came after Anna. Like, she sort of just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
So funny.
like in a ridiculous fashion, like, what were you doing? Like, overreacted type of thing. Trust me, she is not my fan. Of the three people up here, I am definitely a distant third. Actually, probably fourth after producer Eric. That's her favorite. So, but she saw these at the store, so she wanted to pick them up for you guys. So, Eric, can you catch this? If I throw it?
I'm sure. I mean, if he... Oh, he did.
So,
What do the carvings look like, though?
see, that's what... So I thought, open them up.
Yeah.
And are you going to be disappointed when you open this up and see the carvings?
I have a lawyer on retainer right now.
Is this going to impact your enjoyment of this Reese's Pieces?
Oh, no. This is no Reese's Metal. This is just a chocolate shuttlecock.
Okay, but this is like...
Does this negatively impact? I mean, there is nothing on there. It's smooth. Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Definitely does not look like a metal in any way, shape, or form.
There's no carvings at all.
See, that's where
Guys.
you make the mistake, is that you wait a moment after the package is open to inspect it. You just got to go right at it.
I'm still going to eat it.
Yeah, no. But actually, to that point, thank you. And thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Deere.
Yes.
Thank you
You're the
very
best.
much. This is great.
We like you better than Jeff, too.
I get it.
But a loyal listener, was it Marina, came out and definitely agreed with the point and the truth and labeling and et cetera. But I mean, to a point.
I agree to a point. I mean, I'm not filing any lawsuits. I'm eating the peanut butter cup. Reese's, you can't just do whatever you want. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm not going to rehash this because
We'll
I
go
got
on
scolded
forever.
a little bit.
I don't know.
So-
Last time if we get them fired up again, we might get more reasons.
If you can figure out another topic where my wife is like, stop beating up Anna,
Jobs.
No. Because you can't bring jobs in. We're gonna
we've
need
established
like
that.
Snickers.
Cash isn't real.
Yeah. Let me tell you how much paper money's wrong. No.
Believe it when I see it, Jeff.
The U.S. faked the moon landing.
Well, thank you again. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. It was great to hear from you, Matthew. Hope you join us again. Now, before this is completely melted in my hand and is dripping down my arm, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing Podcast, and we'll see you next week.